Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sunrise Stroll and Chat. Thank you for all the participation. You're always there. And I came back here this morning for a repeat because the readings oblige me to do this. Today we have a special celebration with a switch in the readings. And I just had to come back here because wait till you read this here. Wait until you hear this. So it's actually a reading from Daniel. And the reading is as follows. It's Daniel 7. 9 to 10 and 13 to 14. So he's having his vision. This the context is the Babylonian exile. Thrones were set up and the Ancient One took his throne. And now we skip a little bit there. His throne was flames of fire with wheels of burning fire. A surging stream of fire flowed out from where he sat. Thousands upon thousands were ministering to him, and myriads upon myriads attended him. And the reading continues. So the reason we're here is simply because archaeologically we have what they're talking about. Wheels and flames. And this is what we have here on this end of the Magdala stone. So now I'm going to read it again. His throne was flames of fire with wheels of burning fire. A surging stream of fire flowed out from where he sat. So if we look at this a little more closely, we have the wheels. You can see them right there. That's the archaeological understanding of this discovery. And the synagogue is the crown of all the archaeology we discovered, and this stone I call it the crown jewel. And on this crown jewel, this side is the most important side. So there we have the wheels, and underneath the 6 arrows of arrow-shaped or pointed-shaped pieces. Then the archaeologists said these are the flames of fire, and the fire is surging from beneath where he sits. So if it's his chariot, then he's up above this. And obviously you don't represent in Jewish depictions or sculptures or art, you don't depict the presence, the divine presence in any way. You suggest it. Actually in America, you have a similar type of idea. Obviously it's for very different reasons. But, for decades it's like this. I'm not sure when the custom started, but probably with the airplanes and the numbering of the airplanes, but you have Air Force One. So the wheels are, you say Air Force One is flying over wherever, Chicago. Well, it's, the president is there. So here we have this stone, and the most important part undoubtedly is not the menorah, and maybe even this part here would be the most important item, the Holy of Holies, because the wheels of with the fire would be representing the divine presence, and then the wheels of fire leave the temple in Ezekiel. The divine presence leaves the temple at the time of the exile. So it's a theme that's very, very much in the minds of the people at this time. And then Daniel, the book of Daniel, refers to this in such an explicit way. So I wanted to bring it back here since we have this incredible treasure here. And now we go and see the sunrise like we usually do. And we see what a surprise is waiting for us. And there's a connection between the sun and this whole idea of the wheels of fire, because it was actually originating with sun worship. So the sun was worshipped as a god because people recognized how brilliantly the sun enriched our lives. with light, with warmth. And eventually they knew that without sun, there were no crops. There wouldn't be much life on the earth without the sun. And in modern day science, we know that we're exactly positioned where we should be related to the sun. If we were a little bit further away, it would also be very difficult to have we'd be burned up. If we were closer, we'd be burned up. If we were further away, we wouldn't even survive. Just want to show you the fourth mikveh. I hardly ever seen this one, the ritual baths, but this is the fourth one. You can see all the water inside. So normally you don't see that. We must go down there and do the mikveh someday for you. Okay? But right now we're going to head down toward this beautiful light. And maybe I'll take a wider angle here, so we'll look at that in the trees. Isn't that beautiful? The light coming through the trees. I don't want to miss the sunrise itself, but here we're coming. That's amazing. I hadn't noticed that little effect of the light in the branches, the way it shows up here on the image. So we have a good angle here. Not sure what the exact spot is right now from this point here, but we'll be there. So people, it's exciting, you know, when you find this type of archaeology. So if we open up Psalm 19, we have the sun chasing his course like a warrior from east to west. So verbally, the remnants of the sun worship concepts are present in the sacred scriptures, except they are purified because you have monotheism now. And so the people, the chosen people, are being exposed more and more to God's presence and shedding the pagan worship of creatures, which is called idolatry. And actually there are explicit references to idol worship and to the worship of the sun, even by the chosen people at some points in the scriptures, moments of infidelity reverting to the widespread customs here in the Middle East and all the pagan countries. You know, all the countries before Revelation, the sun was given huge credit, and you can understand why. Because without the sun we wouldn't have much. We wouldn't have life, we wouldn't exist. So they attributed our life to the sun by mistake, by lack of clarity, because of a lack of light. This is our first century street here, going in under the Encounter Chapel. Our first century port, also over here. So we're on time for the sunrise, and I'm happy about that. So then the ancient peoples worshipped the sun, and through the revelation of the one true God, we know that the sun is not the source of our life, the ultimate source. That's God himself, and therefore the worship belongs to God. So good, we're ahead of the game, and we saw what we wanted to see, and we can enjoy this beautiful sunrise that should happen any moment, I think. Oh, I've been asked a few times about the gentleman here in this little tent, and the good news is that that time he was taken by ambulance to the hospital, And they released him. He was very dissatisfied with the treatment, and he was accepted in another hospital. And then after a day he was quite restored and provided with all the equipment he needed to cure his sunburn, and which he had suffered very badly in his legs. And he seems to be doing well. Well, there we are. There we are. There we are. There we are. There is the sun. Let me open up the tripod here. There we are. We learn to contemplate nature, and this blesses us a lot because we become filled with astonishment, and astonishment is a very important dimension of life, to be filled with wonder and awe, because then we grow in respect of reality, appreciation for all these gifts. And even the smallest creatures, bring great joy and communicate so much goodness. And goodness is true. And goodness and truth are one. And they are beautiful. Reality is beautiful. From the big star 93 million miles away to this little flower at our feet. So tiny, so small. The detail, the nuance, the differences, the shapes, and how this plant resists so many aggressors, climate, drought. So many of God's creatures, all of his creatures, reveal his beauty. His goodness, his truth. It's clearly not enough for the picture, but I see Mount Hermon from here. It's just getting a little cooler, so there's better visibility to a degree. So let's go back and go to the reading and why this reading is chosen for today. The psalm says, "In the sight of the angels I will sing your praises, Lord." And probably the first mention of the angels is really, in a mysterious way, are those three visitors of Abraham in Hebron at the oak of Mamre. Mysterious experience of divine presence that Abraham has. And then Jacob and his ladder, as he headed back toward Haran, where Abraham left to follow God's call. And he eventually found Rachel. And he had that dream with the ladder. And then he had that mysterious encounter with the angel before his meeting with Esau. And that wrestling and the change of his name to Israel. And then we have this book of Daniel. And so let's read Daniel again. With the awareness of the Psalm 138, "In the sight of the angels I will sing your praises, Lord." So we were reading there earlier up at our synagogue. "As I watched, thrones were set up, and the Ancient One took his throne. His clothing was bright as snow, and the hair on his head as white as wool. His throne was flames of fire, with wheels of burning fire, a surging stream of fire flowed out from where he sat. Thousands upon thousands were ministering to him, and myriads upon myriads attended him." So there we have also a contemplation of the angels. "As the visions during the night continued, I saw one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven. When he reached the Ancient One and was presented before him, he received dominion, glory, and kingship. Nations and peoples of every language serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not be taken away. His kingship shall not be destroyed." And then we have the angel Raphael and curing Tobias of his blindness. And now we go to the names. Gabriel, he comes with the message. The angel of the Lord came to Mary. The messenger of the Lord. The word angel means messenger. And Gabriel is, in Hebrew, it comes, El is God, and Gabriel comes from strength. Gavor, the great strength of God, the great power of God. And Raphael, El, you hear the El, God, and then Raphael, God cures. Raphael is the word in Hebrew for a doctor. Raphael, God's healing, God's doctor, God heals. And then we have in the book of Revelation, Michael, So El is God, and me is who like God. And so this great mysterious combat in heaven, this great moment of decision that the angels have to express their loyalty or their rebellion. So there we have those three great names: Michael, who is like God; Raphael, God heals; and Gabriel, the strength of God. And in Christian tradition for a long time, these three great angels have been recognized because they're named in the scriptures, and they have been honored. And so today is the day when we do that. The 29th of September is the traditional day we do this, and that's why we have those readings. So that's it in a nutshell. So let's keep walking. Every creature, from the smallest little plant, or even the ones we can't see, to the largest ones, to the largest planets and suns, solar system, cosmos. But then the human face. The human face, what a revelation of God's glory. Each person, even the most challenged, the most deformed, it calls our heart to such pity and compassion when we see that, because we know there should be a fullness of glory of God. And it's amazing how sometimes there can be a lack in the tangible, let's say, glory of God that we would like to see. And at the same time, the heart and soul of that person shine with a radiance. When you see a poor person sharing their sandwich with another poor person, and your heart is so touched. And then these angels that are incorporeal, they don't have a body, they're in the spiritual order, so extremely rich in spirit. Some philosophers have speculated that the spiritual richness of one angel would be equal to all the spiritual richness of the entire human race, which through matter is, let's say, diluted, spread out. We all have a little bit. So the angels have extraordinary fullness of life, and they must have an incredible power if some of them had the idea that they could overthrow God. But on the other hand, sometimes we people think like that as well. We think we can ditch out God, we can tell God where to get off, and the amazing thing is He respects our freedom. I find that amazing. I guess everybody does. It's like a little 2-year-old telling his dad to go to get out of his life, because he's kicking a tantrum. So let's train our souls in reverence, in awe and wonder before God's creation, in the extraordinary pouring out of His incredible richness out of love for us. And just like all those angels in heaven that don't experience the division we experience, that have their act completely together, and in their sight, in the sight of the angels, I will praise you, Lord. And Jesus himself comments about the angels in a very, very normal type of style and naturality. So it was clearly part of the common understanding of the common people at that time, of God's people, that we were accompanied by angels. But there's only one God, and He receives the worship of angels and human beings. And we have an extraordinary role of being the nexus of worship between the material world and the spiritual world, because we're both body and soul. And the angels are one pure white, if you will, white, one glorious radiance of God. And we, with God's grace, we're working on it to bring more glory into our homes, into our own hearts and souls and minds. Sometimes we're weighed down with so much passions, so many passions. Imagine somebody that's drunk, that abuses alcohol or drugs, or people that are lazy and don't get up and let the flower blossom fully to a fruit, the flower of their mind, the flower of their opportunity to work, the flower of the opportunity in a family with different family members. And there's so much misery and suffering. And that's why it's good for us also to contemplate the angels, because it helps us to raise our eyes and also to recognize the rays of beauty that are in our lives, despite the challenges, despite the weaknesses, despite the difficulties. So with that contemplation of the angels, that glory of God, say goodbye for today. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm wishing you a fullness of God's blessings as you go forward in your day, and let the radiance of God be reflected in your life. See you later, alligator.